Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Searching for Integrity segment. I'm excited to welcome the program John Smith. John, how are you? And I'm finally going to get to learn your story. I appreciate you stopping by.
Sure, my pleasure, Neil. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Let's kind of talk about the story of, before everything, when John grew up as a child. What was his aspirations? What did John want to do when he was a child? What was his dreams and aspirations of what you wanted to do in life?
Dreams and aspirations. I wanted to not be blamed for anything. Growing.
No. Wow. Oh, wow. Okay.
That's a true story.
Yeah, really. So that's kind of interesting where your story takes you, and that you didn't want to be blamed for anything. So you really didn't have a focus in what you wanted to do in your career and everything?
Well, I knew I wanted to be successful.
Okay.
And I wanted to be an accountant. Although I was convinced of that, I figured out all the courses I needed. And it was in the business building and happened to run into a guy who's a professor. And he said, "You've had accounting?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What'd you get?" I said, "A." And I was trying to figure out if I wanted to do marketing or statistics or management, that kind of stuff. And he said to me, "Well, did you have another number two?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, what grade did you get?" And I said, "A." He said, you don't understand, John. You're the 2% here. Most people can't strike 2 A's in 2 accounting courses." And he basically pointed me in the right direction. And I wanted to be the best CPA in the world.
Wow. Okay. So where did you end up going to school?
Oh, it was North Texas State University back then. Now it's called University of North Texas.
Okay. So you went to be an accountant, and then you went on your career to where?
Well, I went to Dallas. I interviewed with all the big 8 firms, and I actually settled on a national firm called Offer Maroney. And I felt like that's where the people, you get a feeling about people and how they do things and how they speak to you and how they don't speak to you. So I took that for them, and they were the best people. I made a good decision there as well.
It definitely seems like it. So from there, your career, where did it take you? You started as an accountant. How far did you move up the ladder?
Well, I was moving up the ladder in public accounting. I was in public accounting for 5 years, going along the right road with various clients. All the clients and I had good relationships, personal relationships with them. The client aspect was a lot of fun. I had to get that, and finally I took an offer from one of my clients and went to work there. And that didn't last very long because it was a family-owned business. Don't ever go to work for a family-owned business.
Right. Okay.
So I had to wait. I had to wait, and finally I got this opportunity with a construction firm at a construction firm in Dallas, North Dallas, that was the biggest condo builder in the South and Southwest, and eventually in California as well. So I became their controller. And then shortly after that, I became their chief financial officer. And they had acquired in the process, this is where I'll set you some new history here, some new background. Back in those days, it was a galaxy far, far away, Luke Skywalker, Chewbacca, and the other guys named Darth Vader lived sleepy banking institutions known as savings and loans. And their appointed task was to provide mortgages for the communities, rural communities, and they had deposits from their members. Their sources of funds, though, was at 3%. That's what it cost them. And the mortgages they made earned 5%.
Right.
So no problem, they get a 2% spread. But in the early 80s, the Federal Reserve Board was waging a war against inflation, which, by the way, we may have another
Exactly.
inflation here over the next 10 years. In an effort to tame double-digit inflation, the Fed drove interest rates higher. As a result, the cost of new deposits went as high as 18, 19%,
Wow.
signaling a death knell for the savings and loan industry. Federal regulators became concerned and began an effort of my findings. The real estate developers, the only way they could figure out was if they could find someone to own the savings and loans, because the savings and loans were going away. Figuring if the developers knew how to borrow money, they should know how to lend money. So they sought experienced developers to own and manage these withering S&Ls in order to save the industry. The problem with this solution was that a lot of the real estate developers had little, if any, scruples, not even a whiff of honesty, something called integrity.
Right.
They began treating their newly acquired savings and loans as though they were their own personal piggy banks. And that's what set the stage for all that occurred when S&Ls went the way of the dodo bird.
Wow. And so at this point in time, were you buried over yourself? Like, as the chief financial officer, it's a big position in a company and have a lot of responsibility to see where the inflation was going and everything, saying that something's going to happen. Were you confident that you thought everything would be fine at seeing what was occurring?
Yes. I had no financial or tax reporting duties on the savings and loan. I was the chief financial officer of the holding company that bought the savings and loan.
Okay.
And so I was kind of sitting there looking at all kinds of things. We had an insurance company, we had title companies, a lot of different things that I was having to look at and supervise. But I didn't have anything to do with the accounting of the savings and loan. But what I did see over time was I saw that the S&L grew from 80 million on a balance sheet to 1.4 billion in only 4 years. That's how fast that they grew. And
right.
So that meets the definition of a high-flying savings and loan.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the S&L had a lot of problems. Problems were mostly political because the politicians were wanting the S&Ls to help them as well through contributions and so forth. I decided that I was going to become a consultant. I left, went to work as my own business, S&L's compliance and lending procedures.
Right.
And six months later, the doorbell rang and a constable brought this huge box up onto my porch.
Oh my gosh.
And he said, "Are you John Smith?" And I looked at him and I said, "I don't think I want to be." And he said, "No, you got to take this box."
Oh, geez.
And the box was huge. So what I realized going through the box was that it's full of fraud, conspiracy, RICO, you name it, they listed it. They sued me civilly for $540 million.
Yourself, 540 million.
That's correct. Myself, 540 million.
Oh my goodness. My heart dropped when I was being sued for 300,000 for having Newt Gingrich on my website. When I saw that, when I ended up seeing John, I ended up seeing basically a letter come in the mail from a lawyer that I owe $300,000, or else I have to pay $10,000 because someone posted on my website a copyrighted photo of Newt Gingrich that I interviewed Newt. And I'm like, and that made my heart drop. I couldn't imagine. And how much was that today worth? Because when that happened, it's a different time.
Yeah. That's worth, that's worth probably a few billion.
A few $1 billion, exactly.
Yeah. So I just, I took it for what it was. I had this attitude about it because I didn't do anything.
Right.
I went through the box thinking that it wouldn't be long before they realized that John Smith was not one of them. I wasn't like the others. Actually, I didn't like the others. I didn't hang out with them or fly on my company jets. to California to play with the prostitutes. I was too busy coaching Pee Wee football and Little League baseball in a small town near DFW Airport. So with the help of my God-sent attorney, Steve Boucher, who's no longer with us, I faced an insurmountable force that was very much underway in the case against top 7 executives of Vernon Savings. It didn't really matter if you were an officer or a secretary or a loan clerk. The FBI assumed everybody was knee deep in it, and everybody knew everything about it, which was not true.
Wow.
Soon criminal charges were filed then. And I got in arguments with my lawyer all the time. I said, I didn't do anything. I want to fight this thing. And he'd look at me like I was 16 kinds of stupid.
Exactly. I can't put my head around this. I can't believe this part 1 is almost over. And that's what's so amazing about this is people are going to say, I want part 2. I want part 3. I don't know how many parts, because you're going to see that I'm going to go deeper and deeper into questions, because I'm like, I couldn't imagine you went and were doing your job as the chief financial officer for that company, and they were doing dealings with another company that was not doing the right dealings, and you end up in trouble for that. That right. Really gives a heads up to people out there that you better mind your P's and Q's and understand, or really pay attention to everything that you're doing. If you're doing business with a company that, even if it's not your company, that is not on the up and up, you need to say goodbye to them, don't you, John?
Exactly. But I didn't know there was anything wrong. See,
that's the problem. Yeah.
They kept it from me. They hid it from me. I was the guy that had the relationship with the auditors. Annually, I'd have to sit down with the auditors and say, yeah, everything here is good, and answer their questions. But I didn't really learn what happened until after the task force, FBI task force, came to town. I didn't learn.
That's a perfect segue. Now, John, you have a podcast that you can tell people about. And this is your second podcast. Now, this is just going to be just about, really, we're finally focusing on the integrity segment here on the Neil Haley Show, and Neil Haley Network, and also, I guess, Neil Haley TV, Neil Haley Radio. I got to keep, and Neil Haley Podcasting. Boy, I got a lot of things Neil Haley coming. That's a good thing. And John Smith's got all these different things coming. But people out there are going to learn this story because you're interviewing people about their stories and how they have a life and what they do on searching for integrity. But this segment's really going to focus on that, because at this point in time, John's like, I'm fine. Now we're going to find out in part 2 more. But searching for integrity is available on all. You can kind of search it everywhere, John, right? To find searching for integrity. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Of course, the producer of that, the forecaster of that broadcaster is 24/7 AM FM, and we'll see with that where that goes and how it comes out. I enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I interview 2 people a week, and there's not been a single person that said, thank you very much for having me on this integrity show. You know why? Because they want to be part of integrity and associate with integrity. I'm telling you every time, thank you very much.
That's great.
You've improved my life,
That's fantastic. So basically, that's our update, John, is that, again, searching for integrity. You have a website, right? What are the websites people can go to?
Well, let's see. The book, I wrote a book.
Right.
And the book is Embracing the Abyss. It's sold on Amazon, of course. It was I was convicted, it was a scandal. I almost got caught up in it. I got a presidential pardon because of it, because the FBI finally figured out that I was a good guy and they could trust me because I had integrity. And that's what saved me from them and my lawyer. It was hard. It was hard.
All right, we'll check those things out. And then you could just searching for integrity comes up.
The Embracing the Abyss is the title of the book. Yeah, Embracing the Abyss. The Abyss, Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher. If you look at the abyss will look back at you, which is true. That's your conscience, man. That's your conscience.
And we're going to learn about that more.
Yeah.
In their next episode.
And the website is searchingforintegrity.com. And of course, embracingtheabyss.com.
We're really searching for integrity. And this is where we're going to find out the story of you, John, where you came from and what's happening now. And I appreciate part one and look forward to part two. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Living a Legacy. And I'm excited to welcome to the program Eric Couch. Eric, what's going on, man?
Man, excited for today, Neil. Today, we have an actor who has been in Bond, License to Kill, Predator 2, Die Hard, Showgirls, Expendable 3. But honestly, I'm most excited because he is Slaw's brother, Jake Fratelli from Goonies. Welcome, Robert Davi. Robert, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you guys for having me, Eric and Neil. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Wow, Eric. And so when I think about it, Robert, I think about specifically enough just all the things you're known for and in your career. And it spans. And Eric, I know that we're talking off air about that, right, Eric?
Oh yeah. Well, I've been, I love a lot of shows you've been in, but I think I could probably quote the entire Goonies movie. And, my kids can probably quote most of it as well. So, it's pretty fun and exciting. And,
now, did you know that I did an album that went to #6 Billboard Jazz?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I was actually going to bring that up. My wife was she mentioned, she's like, wait, he's the singer. I was like, yeah, because so I was a vocal performance major in college, and, you were actually an inspiration, although my brothers gave me crap all the time. Right. And they're always doing opera crap. But, when you're singing Una Furtiva, right? What's funny is in my senior recital, they gave it to me, and I'm dying when I first hear it because all I can think is the Goonies. But
I sang that. I didn't do any of the opera in the album. I did the American Songbook with. Mm-hmm. It's called Davi Sings Sinatra. It went to #6 on Billboard Jazz. You can get it on Amazon, iTunes, and then if you go to YouTube, you can see I traveled the world doing a show of the American standards.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that the opera in Goonies you're referring to, Una Furtiva Lacrima, that was all an improvisation. That was not in the script.
Yeah, but it was great. It made the scene.
Yeah.
And obviously you sing and then you made this. And what's really cool, the tie-in that I didn't know before is that, as you sang Sinatra in it, your very first movie, Contract on Cherry Street, was with Frank Sinatra, right?
Yeah, we became friends from that. Sinatra, being an Italian American,
right.
Sinatra in utero. So
he
was such a huge influence, not only in the music world but also in society, because the guy that was one of the earliest superstars to come out against anti-Semitism and racial bigotry.
Right.
And also, he made a transition from being a liberal, as many had, bleeding heart liberal, to a conservative later on in life. And I'm sure his voice would have been needed today to kind of like set the record straight with a lot of what's happening.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely. We're afraid to say certain things at times, Robert, right? Because of the police. It just happened in an interview I just did now, that the publicist is livid based on a question we asked, which I'm like, wow, we can't even ask any questions about growing up in the cities of Chicago. We just giving straight ups. I'm getting text messages right now.
Neil, that has to be fought against vehemently. Every single person. I wrote about this canceling of free speech on Breitbart in 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
And the Hollywood community is right now, they need to be held accountable. The artists for not promoting free speech, no matter what it might be, no matter what side of the fence you are on politically, as long as you're not an anarchist. But I guess it doesn't matter because anarchists can speak, but not patriotic Americans. And people like Jimmy Kimmel and people like Jimmy Fallon that have these mouthpiece shows and The View and everything else that berate a different kind of thinking, a different thought. And we are all for each other in this nation.
Yes.
Yeah.
there are issues, but we can't go on canceling everything. Look, they're saying that Shakespeare is racist now. I mean, the latest was Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss, yeah.
There maybe have been some cartoons of his back in the 30s, but
don't even get into Shel Silverstein. I remember reading Where the Sidewalk Ends as a kid.
Yeah,
that would definitely be off the books.
But it's a confusing time for the youth.
Yeah.
And I think, look at the stock market's going down. Gasoline in California went from $2 a gallon with Trump to now over $4 a gallon.
Right.
Our rights are being threatened in a certain way, and we have to band together, left and the right, to tell the truth. We have to stop with the hypocrisy of protecting whatever side you happen to be on.
Right.
We saw what happened with
Correct.
Cuomo now. What happened with Andrew Cuomo. I was talking about him over a year ago. He wasn't held accountable for what he said, and he was holier than thou and a braggart and a bit of a cartoon character. And now he's, getting, his at least he's under some kind of scrutiny.
Well, and what we're seeing, I'm starting to see, I've seen a couple influencers that I follow, and some of them, it's hard to tell which side they're on, but they are starting to pick up the gauntlet of, look, that's why we have freedom of speech. And I will, one of them a while back, he was like, look, I may not agree with you, but I'll fight to the bitter end on your ability to say that. It doesn't matter if I agree with you or not. Yeah. That's what freedom of speech recommends.
A philosopher that said, I will fight to the death. I disagree, right. With everything you've said, but I will fight to the death to let you speak it.
To defend it, yeah.
To defend it. And we have forgotten that, and that's frightening. Yeah. That's frightening. And they want to label everything hate speech if it's a difference of opinion. Now, right. There are people that absolutely propagate certain kind of negative speech, of course. And I always felt, I spoke about this in CPAC, guys,
right.
in 2016. The ancient Romans had the calumny law. And the reason being is they found that good, upstanding citizens that wanted to run for government or be in the government were being slandered against.
Mm-hmm.
And so that made good, even though there was false accusations. So these good, upstanding people weren't running anymore. And they were getting the bottom of the barrel with people. And what happened was they started the calumny law, which said, if you accuse someone of something and they were found to be innocent, you were given the punishment for what you accused them of. Now, we need that right now in America.
Right. Yeah, because anybody can say anything about anyone.
Right, exactly.
And anybody can sue anyone for any reason. And it's like you bring a lawsuit, well, there's got to be merit. Well, not necessarily, right? The government can sue anyone and they're using your money to fight you. And it's just, you almost can't win that proposition. So it's like, where are people protected? And obviously this is a phenomenal segue into why part of what we want to talk about today is your upcoming project. But I want to push that off just a touch longer, because there is so much story with you, right? As a singer, as an activist, as a actor,
I don't call myself an activist. I consider myself a concerned citizen.
But all that means is I actually speak up for what I believe.
No, I know that it has a connotation that to me is a concerned citizen. And then people are frightened to speak up because then they're labeled an activist or they're minimalized in a certain way.
Right.
The political correct police always go after when we open our mouth up one time, or even in ways of just debating somebody. We're fearful to debate now. This is really scary. There's no dialogue. Yeah.
Even on the left, Alec Baldwin mentioned something today. He's off Twitter now because he mentioned the comment about some actress, I don't know who it was, changing her accent or some kind of strange thing. And, he got berated on it. Now, Alec, I know, I respect him as an artist. I have had political conversations with him. We don't agree. But there is a, and even I know of a 14-year-old girl who was vehemently against Trump with her friends and on media. And recently it was told to us that there's a turnaround. People feel, and the youth and even celebrities said, what the heck did we do? We got led down the wrong path.
Yeah.
If that's happening at a grassroots of youth under the underground, and we know that that's what happened. I mean, the disgust of CNN and MSNBC, I'm all for, let everybody debate everybody, and but let's not be hypocrites.
Right. Well, and people ask me, I'm like, there's two things, right? One is I'm convinced. Now this is me, but I am absolutely convinced that media and big pharma are working together, because I turned off the news 20 plus years ago because I'm convinced that their sole deal is to get my blood pressure up and get me, just frustrated. And I'm like, and I think they want me, buying blood pressure meds, and that's their whole goal, right? So I'm like, I can't watch. There is no such thing as news reporting anymore. And I don't care almost who you're listening to. It seems like it's all a big editorial, and it's just an opinion piece, but they phrase it as fact, which drives me crazy.
Well, Eric, you got to look at it's even bigger than big pharma. Let me just tell you.
Well, it is. It's just the blood pressure part for me.
Politicians in Congress or the Senate, on the left or the right.
Yeah.
Think about the politicians in there that have been in power for 40 plus years. Schumer, Pelosi, Schiff, McConnell. I mean, think about these politicians that have had a stranglehold on the American people's policies. Now,
right.
You have to realize something. We've got the media that is in the tank. You've got Hollywood that's in the tank. You've got education that's in the tank.
Yeah.
Or Marxist culturalism. So they are feeding continually, and this is a big thing that I think the GOP misses and the conservative movement misses, really, is understanding culture and using culture and people that can communicate to the masses in a certain way. So you have these talk show hosts, and they're feeding the public one ideology, continued, and without any repercussions. It's astounding. We have people in our government that are working for special interests, foreign interests, and they're not working for the American people.
Right. Now which takes us
and lifts the skirt out of from all of them, as he's been for years, and he gets attacked like an animal. But yet in other parts of the world now, like France, so supposedly Le Pen may win in France over Sarkozy. There's issues happening over in France. Today in Finland, or yesterday, a woman who had a yoga class, and someone from the yoga class, I don't know all the details, someone from the yoga class got the COVID. So she took her child and she went into the woods, their cabin, to just isolate for 14 days. Well, when she turned her phone on in the woods, the police came and they extracted her. Now, that happened in China, if you remember. Early on, we saw videos of the police going into homes and taking the Chinese, people.
Right.
I don't know if you saw those videos.
No, I haven't seen the videos.
There were videos of that early on. I'm talking a year ago, January, February, where I knew that this was maybe even December, that there was a bigger problem than what we anticipated because of what was happening in these videos on that you would catch on Twitter that were leaked. And so there's something, something nefarious is happening. We've let it happen.
Yeah, we did. Okay. Eric, I know you're ready to go to the next part. We're talking about the project, right? Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. Right. Which is exactly, I mean, it goes in line with all of this that we're talking about, right? Because Robert, you're focusing on what are you passionate about? And I've got to believe that you're passionate about your latest project, because it's such an impactful story for the history of our country. So you tell us about it. Tell us your role, and
well,
give us a little insight. I'm not going to even tell them the name because I want you to go there.
It's Nick Loeb is the co-director, writer, producer, and the actor that plays forget his last name, Nathaniel, who was the biggest abortion in America, tremendous, and it follows his story in a way. It's called Roe versus Wade, and we all know about the Supreme Court decision of Roe versus Wade,
right?
So the landmark decision that it had and the effect it had on the nation and on unborn children, but we don't know how the sausage was made, so to speak. We don't know what happened under the sheets of these Supreme Court justices. I happened to play Supreme Court Justice William Brennan. Now, Brennan was, Antonin Scalia called Brennan the most influential justice of the 20th century.
Yeah.
He was a guy that believed in a living constitution that opened up, the Constitution was malleable. And he came up with the argument of a woman's right to privacy based on a case from Texas, and then started to help sway the court, the rest of the court, with that decision, that we could use that as a basis for having. Now, he was a Roman Catholic. Now, we have great actors that are playing cameos of chief justices, but the story is this doctor, this abortionist, who goes through a transition. So by the end of the film, he has a catharsis, much like I think the audience will, because it doesn't spoon-feed. It's not a propagandized film. It's not shoving something down your throat. It's presenting facts. It's fair, and then you can make your own decision.
When I saw the first trailer before it came out, what blew me away about it, and I can't wait to watch the film, is the fact that, Robert, when I saw it specifically enough, you couldn't see which side that the film was about. That Nick, that is pro-life, sees specifically enough, gave both sides. So if you're on the left, you should see this film. If you are on the right, you should see this film, because either way, you'll see the true story of what happened. And that's important, to highlight history in the right way with the true whole story, not just one side, but both. And I think this is why you were part of this.
Absolutely. I say this: we have to find culture, because there's big issues, and the left is 20 years ahead of us in hitting these big issues. They have infiltrated culture 20 years ahead of an agenda. They know it. The writers. Don't forget, I just did another film called Reagan. I played Brezhnev. Dennis Quaid plays Reagan. Penelope Ann Miller plays Nancy Reagan, and Quaid plays a Russian operative, and I'm playing Brezhnev. And I knew this ahead of time with Reagan, but in the 1940s, in Hollywood, the Communist Party had infiltrated America since the 1920s.
Wow.
With the unions and everything else. This is factual stuff. You can Google it. It's not made up. They had infiltrated Hollywood. So much so that I think in 1946 at a actress's house called Ida Lupina, she had a meeting of the Communist Party at her house. Now, she was not a communist, but she had a meeting there. And William Holden, the actor, told Ronald Reagan about it, and they crashed this meeting of all Hollywood elite.
Really?
Now, when Reagan went, he was browbeaten and told not, and this is why I'm saying, you're going, really? This is one of the big stories of America. And when Reagan was browbeaten and not able to speak, they wouldn't let him speak, an actor called John Garfield. I don't know if you know that actor. John Garfield was the first anti-hero, the first of a Brando, he was one of the first actors from the group theater, a brilliant actor. Force of Evil is a film he did. He died very young at 38 years old. But he got up and said he should speak. We should let him speak. He has a right to speak. Reagan. And Reagan got up and amidst boos and everything else that you would get, like Hollywood today, if I got up and spoke, they would boo me and browbeat me and negate. Reagan spoke. And years later, an actor that was there, you ever see the Godfather movie?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
All right. The person who played the police captain, remember the police captain that punches Michael Corleone at
Right.
the hospital?
Yeah.
He shoots him in the throat in the cafe. That actor was Sterling Hayden. Now, Sterling Hayden was a patriot. He fought in the war for us in World War II, but he was also part of the Communist Party. He then denounced them, but later on he called Reagan a one-man wrecking crew of the Communist Party in Hollywood. Now, have you ever heard of the Venona Project?
Nope.
Okay, another cultural thing. Now, the left has made innumerable movies about the blacklisting, like Joe McCarthy and everything else, right? They've done so many different things about McCarthy and how bad the blacklist was. And even today, you'll hear GOP people say, well, that's worse than the McCarthy era, or the McCarthy era was this and that. Well, there were two factions of that. There was the House Un-American Activities, and there was the McCarthy hearings. In 1996, a Democrat senator from New York, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, said he wanted the Venona Project to be made public.
Oh.
What is the Venona Project? The Venona Project was a Soviet code that they thought we couldn't encrypt, we couldn't break. From the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and on. Well, guess what? We had decoded it. So the Venona Project, 99% of the people that Joe McCarthy fingered in our government as communists were. And we know in history today, and we know in history today that Brennan, the CIA guy, was a member of the Communist Party, was he not? We know that. Did you know that? Right? So if you have this infiltration in America, just think of the bureaucracy in education, in media, in everything else, because, and even the Weather Underground, Bill Ayers wanted world communism. He is writing he's after they stopped blowing up buildings, he and Bernadette Dorn, what did they do? And I wrote about this on Breitbart. Go to Breitbart, read some of my past articles. You'll get a wealth of information.
Okay.
But Dorn and Bill Ayers, they went from blowing up buildings like defund the police, blowing up and the Pentagon. They realized that if they captured education, it would be more powerful.
Right.
So they started writing the school books and advising the school books. And where are they? In Chicago. Like that reporter got upset, the PR person got upset about Chicago. Anyway, unless we are armed with this information, and I always said a film should be done, a true film like Roe versus Wade on Joe McCarthy, because you can't say what's happening now in terms of shutting up people that want freedom. We're not talking about people wanting to overthrow the government of the United States. They just want the government, this Constitution, to be upheld.
Right. Just want some honesty and people to be accountable for what they say and do. Not rocket science.
No matter what side of the fence they're on.
Yeah.
And I say both sides do not represent the American people anymore. They represent special interests, foreign interests, and the whatnot, the global.
Yeah, because I don't care which side you're on. You know, most of them have been there. I mean, they've been hanging out with each other for 20, 30, 40 years. They're much closer friends than they are. Like, I've never met them. So,
well,
you guys are enemies, but you've been hanging out with each other for 40 years? Really? Yeah.
Well, it's that, but also, you see, the left knows how to emote. They're able to put a message into affecting the youth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like Biden right now with God bless the guy's soul, opening up the borders again. Now, here we have COVID-19. Here we have American financial peril. We have health peril because of COVID. And it's a good idea that he says, let's open up. What he should have delayed it. I mean, open up the borders, and now they're coming across. These kids, what are they doing? Now, these kids, do you know, they've got wristbands on. Did you know that? The kids that are pouring over the border have wristbands on. they are controlled by the cartels in Mexico. Lara Logan did a special on this. Wow. And they track them exactly where they are and how they're going. So what is the left doing in America? What is Pelosi doing to America? Now, her family, D'Alessandro family, JFK was having them investigated back in the day. And no one talks about any of this stuff. These people go around. She doesn't care that gasoline went to over $4 a gallon. The elite doesn't care.
Right.
But the worker, I'm a soldier of cinema. I'm a blue collar actor. You know, I care about the effect that policy has on every man. But the look, we pay Pelosi's gas bill and Gavin Newsom's gas bill. Do you think they care? And Biden's, that gas went to Kamala Harris, $4 and $5 a gallon. Do you think they care what that does to the poor worker that has kids he wants to send to school? The Mexican national from here now, the immigrants that have become citizens here, that are working hard, did everything the right way. But they sell it to the kids in such a way that Trump was putting kids in cages when it happened under the Obama year, and it sticks. And you can't dig yourselves out of this because you don't know how to capture the imagination of these, and it's almost impossible because they pick you up on media.
All right. So Eric, now we're getting to that legacy question. And he really is living a legacy, Robert, by being a patriot, by truly speaking out against what's wrong and telling us what's going on, even though he knows what he's going to face in Hollywood all the time by saying these things, which that truly shows a legacy.
Well, and, you know, it does because, you know, the person who's willing to stand up for what's right, regardless of the consequences, is who can change the future, right? It's you know, a paid army is going to give up when they're under attack, but someone who's got a cause and a mission, who's not just doing it for a paycheck, but they're doing it because that's what they're called to do, is almost impossible to stop, right? Because you got a mission. It's not, I'm not doing it for a paycheck. I'm doing it because that's what I'm called to do, right? And, you know, you've got the passion to, you know, this is what you're doing, and you're getting to do movies that reflect your passion, which is exciting. So one of the questions, Robert, that we love to ask people is, you know, our show, Living a Legacy, is about celebrities and amazing people that use their influence to impact the world around them. And you know, you're speaking up daily to use your influence with that. So one of the questions we like to ask is, you know, how do you want to be remembered? And that could be family, friends, as far as career, any direction you want to take it. But, you know, how would you answer that question?
It has multiple aspects to it because you have the family aspect that comes, you know, the legacy you leave your children with.
Yeah.
Hopefully a way of them being able to look back on a father and how he presented himself to society with his shortcomings and his good parts. I would hope that I lived a life that's honest and truthful, and a life of faith, and a legacy of you know, also your work that you're doing. You know, I recently saw a video by Sarah Silverman, the comedian, and she mocked the idea of America first. She mocked the idea of America first.
Yeah.
And she was mocking that. Now, I've met her. I haven't had a conversation. But I would like to be able to, the left and the right of Hollywood, to have a symposium, an honest dialogue with each other in terms of what it is they see with America and where, like, even with Columbus. I did the movie Christopher Columbus with Marlon Brando. I played Martin.
Really?
I was in Spain with the experts of all the voyages. Now, Columbus isn't who they said he was. He doesn't deserve the statues to be torn down.
Right.
So the exposing the hypocrisy, and even probably my own in some instances, but it is how do we set this ship straight? How do we bring the world and the country together? That's a legacy I would like to find. I try to do it through the music, and you try to find a way to be able to affect minds to say, okay, like I'm an environmentalist. I did a film in the Amazon rainforest in 1990, one of the first art films, big films, dealing with the rainforest. And I've always been with the environment. I did a concert for Prince Albert in Monaco. And
really?
Hollywood for Science, yes, for his oceans organization, and one in Hollywood for Science. So I want to be able to hopefully bridge the gap between big issues and to find the truth in some way. And I'll give you this example. My son came home from school one day. He was 8 years old at the time. And I could tell on his face something happened. And I said, "What's wrong, Nick?" He goes, "What's wrong? We're best friends. Tell me everything." And he says, "Well, Mikey called me a name." "Oh, what name did he call you?" He says, "No, Dad." I said, "What name? Come on, we're best friends. Tell me what he called you." He called me a name, and he told me the name. I says, "Do you know what that means?" "Yeah, Dad." "Do you feel like that?" He goes, "No, Dad, I like this girl, Christy." I says, "But it doesn't matter, Nick. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean?" If he goes, "I understand that." I said, "But let me tell you something. If anybody calls anybody that name or a name like that or anything like whatever it might be, you defend that person. You protect that kid that's being bullied. This is when he's 8 years old. You protect that, because I know that I'm big influence and a lot of masculinity. So I know that who knows where my son at 16, if he goes in the closet and hangs himself because he can't or couldn't come out and say, "Dad, I'm gay."
Right.
You understand? So I tell that to the conservative movement. I spoke about that at the Family Values Conference one time.
Yeah.
And I tell the LGBTQ community at the same time. I was discussing faith with my mother when I was 16. I was trained by Jesuits, went to Catholic school, and she was the head of confraternity for Long Island. And I'm explaining to her the idea of Teilhard de Chardin, who was a Jesuit that wrote these books called The Divine Milieu, The Heart of the Matter, The Phenomenology of Man. That was really, he coined the term the cosmic Christ.
Yeah.
The consciousness of the cosmic, where we're all connected through Christ. And that Christ is the Alpha and Omega. And as the pendulum of man swings from the left to the right, it slows until finally Christ consciousness hits all of us. So I'm describing this kind of Zen thing to her, and she panicked for a second. And I saw it in her eyes. It was like I pushed her off a building.
Yeah.
And I said, she goes, "Well, what do I believe in then?" And I go, No, Mom. I'm just talking. So I tell to the LGBT community, you can't push people off a building.
Right.
You have to respect what they feel and think. And perhaps sometime they'll get around to a different way of thinking. But it's a dishonest thing to push it off a building, to push an agenda down the throat. It's what they're doing now in terms of, until a baby is born with just an anus, he's either male or female. We have the same thing in nature. A cow is born. It's a bull or a cow. A horse so you mean to tell me, as human beings, and we're animals, we can't have a gender at birth? This is a crazy kind of mixed up thinking that's causing, look, could it be because we're waiting for aliens to come and their nuded sexuality? Maybe is it something bigger than all of that? I don't know. But it's society, and we have to have, and I don't care if anybody has any relationship at all amongst each other, individuals. I don't judge anyone. That's not for me. My religion, Christ died for our sins. Christ, no man judges.
Right.
No man judges. So let anybody live how they want. It's not for me to judge, but at the same time, have respect for people of difference of opinion. And they don't today.
Yeah.
It's that the smaller minority, it's like, is it right for women, transgendered, male born, become female, to participate in female sports? I think that doesn't make logic to me.
Right.
It doesn't seem logical to me. Let's have a transgendered sport.
Right.
Yeah.
Have that league and division. That would make sense.
Let's do that. It's like all of a sudden Hasbro said, no more Mr. Potato Head.
Oh yeah.
No more Mrs. Potato Head. So now we're going to have Potato Head. Well, what the hell is wrong? I mean, it's crazy. And there's some other force, some other force pushing this. And it's so strange.
Well, it's like, who's coming up with it? And what are you trying to distract me from? Because this is just, telling me that orange is yellow and yellow is green, when my whole life yellow's been yellow and orange is, and it's like, what are the truths, right? It's like somewhat society doesn't want us to believe that there's any, truth. Everything is as you define it, and everything's fluid. And it's like, no, there are some constant things, gravity, whether you agree with it or not, you jump off a cliff, gravity's going to grab you, whether you believe in gravity or not.
Exactly.
But it's
like there are certain inalienable truths that just are.
And it only seems to be issues that the left propagates. It's like Nancy Pelosi when the statues came down. Right. So it's only a statue. Well, that's the wrong thing. That's the wrong thing to say, Miss Pelosi. And I met her, and she was very cordial and very nice. But I just don't understand how we have homeless in Los Angeles, guys. You can drive around and you can see these poor people in their tents suffering, 60,000.
Right.
They're all over the place. And then in San Francisco and other places in the country.
Right.
You mean to tell me we're letting immigrants in and not worrying about encampments for these people? We have enough land in America and money. The money that they're giving to these migrants that are coming into the nation, that are adding more homelessness. And we're all for that. But when my grandparents came, there were quotas. They had to have also a work and a place to stay, and they had accountability. Now they're just saying bing and into the system. No, it's wrong. It's evil. What they're doing is evil. Nobody calls them out on it. You don't have these guys. I blame the GOP. They're just as guilty as anyone else because they don't call them out on this stuff. You got one or two guys that do, but the rest of them are just worried about getting reelected.
So Robert's looking to run, right? That's the next thing, right? No.
They'd have to draft me big time. I ain't gonna put my hat in the ring. They gotta do like Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
Like it. So, Robert, the film is available. It comes out in April, right? Is that correct? What date in April?
Streaming all over the place.
April 10th. And everybody needs to see it because if it doesn't matter what side you're on, you'll get to see the true story of this. And that's
and you'll learn. Roe versus Wade. It's impacted our nation more than any court case in the history of our country.
Right. Now the Supreme Court justices, it's always interesting. We have a lot of talk about the Supreme Court justices, and now you get a peek under their robes.
Right. If it really happens or not. If that would, and could you imagine that craziness? They would go the direction, but it's all about propaganda and what happens for sure.
Well, Eric, we didn't have science back then. Don't forget. So they came up with another thing because we didn't have the science we have today. Right. If they had the science, I think it would have been a little different of an issue.
It makes it a lot harder case to go the direction it did with the science that we have today.
Yeah. It's also confusing because it's being used as birth control. So when you say 60 million unborns being aborted, staggering figure, that's like communist Chinese figures.
Yeah.
Stalinist figures in terms of death camps and stuff like that. But not all of them had to be medical, I'm sure.
Exactly. All right. So Eric, wow, what a great guest. You really enjoyed this, didn't you?
Man, I've always been a fan, and I love, Robert. Our views are wildly similar on a lot of things. Just standing up and being who you are. I like me, love me, hate me, whatever. I am who I am, right? And that's how you just present yourself as you've got to be true to yourself, and I love the fact that you're just.
Listen to
Look, it's not one side versus the other. We're looking for truth, and we want both sides. We want anybody to have freedom of speech. We want people to be empowered. And I love that you're doing that, man.
Well, we've got to discuss. In other words, the other day, everyone saw the clip. He was talking to Nance. And you want to ask me a question if that's what you want, or whatever you guys want, I'll answer questions. And it went, no questions asked, went blank. And the other day too, when he was leaving a thing. Now, God bless the man if he's ill. I don't know if he's not. I'm not a doctor. I hear rumors, I hear things. I'm not going to judge on that. He does seem frail to me. He does seem kindly. He does seem kind of, when you see him, you want to go, the poor guy. You know what I mean? But that's the leader of the free world. Now, when he was leaving that other thing, and I asked him about the border, he says, we had a discussion. And what about you? And he goes, all of it. And he leaves. Now, if that Trump pulled a trick like that, it would have been crazy news. Don Lemon would have had a fit. Chris Cuomo would have had a fit. Joe Scarborough would have had a fit. And yet
24/7.
The hypocrisy of the media has to be accountable. All right? They are connivers of Caesar's Senate.
All right. All right.
And it's all editorial.
All right. So thanks again, Robert. Thanks again, Eric. And this was Geoff. Living a Legacy. Guys, take care. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Eric. And we look forward to talking off air again with Robert. So take care. All right. That was Living a Legacy.
Thanks for joining the show, Robert. Appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me, John.
All right, guys. That was Living a Legacy.